Thanks, Chair. I'd like to bring us back to where you started. I missed the very beginning, Mr. Kerr, of your opening statement. Probably no surprise that I'm going to take you back to that topic. And I think part of what I might have missed was where you told us the number of times that ASIC has used Section 313 of the Telecommunications Act to knock out a particular website. Oh, thank you.
Sure. Over the last 12 months, we have used power 10 times. Just to clarify, it's not to knock out a website so much, but rather to block access
so if you're within
to the website by Australian consumers or investors who go through Telstra, for example, so as to ensure, and our objective is to ensure that they don't lose money through overseas criminal operations.
If you're trying to view that particular site from an Australian IP address, you won't be able to see it.
That was the basis upon which we were seeking the blocking. That's correct.
Thank you. Okay. What about the previous 12 months?
No, that's the extent of our use of the power, Senator, and I don't know whether you caught the end of my statement, but we are making a commitment that we will publicly report on our use of Section 313 powers in it. In the case of ASIC, we want to be as public as possible because of the nature of what we're trying to do with this, to target websites. We'd like to know the public to know about that, so we will publicly report on our use of the power.
Now, the kind of scammers that you chase, who use sites, I guess, to back up the direct social engineering
that's
phone
part
calls,
of it, yes.
They have existed probably for as long as the internet. Why have you just started using these notices in the last 12 months?
Look, friend, do you want to...
Yeah, Senator, we made a conscious decision to try and interrupt these criminal activities in the most efficient way that we could.
Yeah. But why weren't you doing this 5 years ago, for example?
Look, the evolution of our efforts to combat these activities has involved various ways of dealing with the websites over the years. Well, we have tried in the past on numerous occasions to get voluntary compliance by domain registries and other overseas agencies to suspend or take down websites. What we have found is that is not always effective. It can be far from straightforward for overseas-based operations. It can be a form of disruption that is not as timely as we'd like, and time is often of the essence in these matters, because if you can stop people getting in early, you can reduce the losses. This appeared to us to present an additional opportunity to limit the exposure of Australian consumers and investors to these sites.
Were you, I mean, inspired's the wrong word, I'm trying to work out exactly what the right word would be, but noting that the Federal Police started using that section of that Act to knock out a set of websites that's maintained by Interpol, that mechanism hadn't been used to block content before. Was that what inspired ASIC to start using this method?
No, Senator. There had been discussions as part of a task force, I think it's Task Force Galilee, which is aimed at trying to reduce the harm in relation to cold calling scams. And as part of that process, we looked at a whole range of ways that we could interrupt and take action in relation to these illegal activities.
Were you aware that the Federal Police were using that method at the time?
No, I wasn't aware.
You weren't
aware? I'm not sure that ASIC was aware either.
Okay, so it's by pure coincidence that section of the Act has been there for years and years, and within months of each other, two agencies have started using those notices in a completely unique way.
Senator, I'm not aware that there was any sort of discussion that by one agency about its use in relation to one area that they have sort of regulatory responsibility for, and the suggestion that we use it in relation to illegal activities, fraudulent websites. However, there was discussions at the Task Force Galilee level about how to take action in relation to cold calling scams.
Could you provide for us, because this is a rather unique way of using that section of the Act, could you provide for us a de-identified copy of what the letter that goes to the service provider looks like? Describe anything that would compromise a particular operation.
I don't see why we couldn't do that.
I think we can do that, Senator.
Thanks, would be much appreciated. I just want to
I should say that, and I think the Deputy Chair said, ASIC's Deputy Chair said at the beginning, we've received a number of FOI requests and we'll fully comply with those FOI requests as we're required to under the law.
Excellent. Well, I would expect you to, but that's good. But there might be a way of just getting a bit of a sense of how these notices are being used, because there's no provision under that section of the Act for anything like a notice. So I'm presuming you've just invented a form of words by way of a letter to a service provider. Is that what it's roughly going to look like?
It's essentially, yes.
Dear Telstra,
it's a letter
dear
form.
IINet? Yeah. How many of these letters do you have to send out? Is it one to each ISP that currently serves customers in Australia?
No, the letter is sent out, and I can't say exactly in all 10 occasions,
Yep.
but the letter is faxed out to the telecommunication carriers. The same letter, it's got in the sort of what you might call the address field, the telecommunication carrier's name, so it'll have 5 of those. I think in some occasions there might be less in others, with the fax number or the email address, and we send it out that way.
There's hundreds of ISPs. There's hundreds of ISPs serving content to Australian customers, though. You send hundreds of faxes?
No.
So you only
don't.
go after the largest ones?
We send it to the largest ones, and as I understand it, some of those, some of the technology aspects, I have to say, Senator, I'm not totally across. However, as I understand it, some of the carriers actually control the pipelines, as it's been described to me, from Australia to the international overseas providers. So,
Okay. So
by
you might
serving
be-
on those
Yep.
particular carriers, we get to the majority.
So you might be a smaller ISP that doesn't get served one of these faxes. You might not even know that at the gateway level, particular forms of content are being blocked. That's a reasonable consequence, I suppose, isn't it? So you've sent faxes to the 5 or 10 largest ISPs who have also therefore blocked the gateways into Australia. I wasn't
Yes.
aware of that. So therefore the rest of the, in the low hundreds, I suppose, of
There
ISPs.
might be some that, yes.
Okay.
Can I just make the point there, Senator, that that may be the case in relation to our past use in those 10 occasions. We are consulting with other law enforcement agencies, with the carriers and others, to ensure that from ASIC's perspective there's greater transparency around how it's used and who it applies to in the future. And the sort of issue you've raised is one of the issues that we will discuss, because as I've said before, for ASIC we want to be very public about this. We want people to know about it.
I want to just very briefly change the subject, and then I'll come back to content blocking. Can I confirm that ASIC supports the retention of telecommunications data and also content? And I'm noting Commissioner Tanzer at the hearing of the Joint Committee on the 27th of September in Sydney was pretty forthright about ASIC's inability to access lawfully intercepted information. So this is relating to the data retention proposals that were forwarded by the Attorney-General to the Joint Committee. Could you just confirm for us that it is ASIC's view that a data retention scheme would be good for the work of the agency?
I don't think we've changed our view from what
changed the view?
Commissioner Tanzer said on that occasion. I haven't got before me what exactly he said, but...
For what length of time do you believe telecommunications data should be retained?
I think we'd have to take some of those issues on notice, Senator.
I'm
If
interested.
if data retention was introduced, Senator, I think it would need to be subject to an appropriate consultation process about length of time and so forth.
Yeah. I'm interested to know what ASIC would bring to the table. It would certainly need a degree more consultation than it's had thus far, but what is the position of ASIC? That's why I'm interested in while we've got you here.
Well, it's a hypothetical question, I think.
No, not at all. It's real and present. Your Commissioner has been telling a committee what ASIC's policy is. I'm just trying to draw you out on some details that weren't canvassed. For what length of time do you believe data retention should be implemented? For what forms of data, whether it's just the traffic data or the telecommunications data or also of content? And do you support the Attorney-General's view that it should be rolled across the entire population of the country, including, obviously, everyone sitting in this room?
Look, I think it would be better for us to take those on notice. We're happy to provide a response.
And the purpose of that is to whether or not it would actually improve your record of successfully prosecuting people, as if we could go to actually the cause of why. Okay, so you've taken those on notice. You posted a press release on the 22nd of March that had a bit of pickup, at least in the Fairfax and the online tech press in subsequent days, about the Global Capital Wealth case, which was the one that was subject to the overblocking. When did you first hit send on your fax machine on the Global Capital Wealth instance? On what day?
Senator, I'd need to have a look at the exact dates. I should say, in relation to the Global Capital Wealth, and this gives an indication of the sort of thing that we're up against, there was 4 occasions, as far as I know, under different guises, that criminal organisation had websites up on and trying to defraud Australian consumers.
Yep. At what date did you initiate that block request?
Well, I'm not aware of the exact date, Senator. I'll have to take that on notice.
Find out for us. Yep. On what date were you aware that you had overblocked by a factor of about 1,200?
I think we were made aware of that on the 11th of April.
April?
That was not in relation to, as far as I'm aware, the notice served on the 22nd or 26th of March. It was in relation to a notice served, I think, on the 3rd of April. And sorry, can I clarify? It's a request made. We don't serve notices. It's a request made.
But it's pursuant to the law of the land. I mean, it's a fairly uncompromising request. You're not asking nicely. You're saying you are now legally obliged to block this content, right?
Well, the reading of the section is that the telecommunication carrier has to give reasonable assistance. They do have the ability to consider whether or not it's reasonable assistance, and they could come back to ASIC or to any other requester and raise an issue with us.
In the 10 notices, I don't know whether to refer to them as notices, but you know what I mean, the requests that you've issued in the last 12 months, have you ever had an instance of an ISP coming back and saying thanks but no thanks?
Not that I'm aware of, Senator.
Could you just check that on notice just in case that turns out to be the case? I'll bring it to a close.
Thank you.
And you've taken quite a bit of material on notice. If you can just, I guess, disambiguate for us the chain of events and the particular block request that led to the overblocking.
We can, Senator.
It's also my understanding that if somebody does attempt to access any of the websites that you've requested to be blocked, you don't actually get any kind of notification. Nothing comes up. The site's just not there.
That's one of the issues that we're currently looking at, Senator. I mean, from our point of view, again, it would be desirable